Okay, welcome everyone to this episode of From Here to There with Lily Lee and Stephanie Brown. And I am going to turn everything over to Stephanie. So, Stephanie, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Welcome, Lily. Thanks for being with us. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here today and be back in stamps virtually.
Yes. Be back in Sam virtually. I feel that. So let's dive right into it. From here to there, we are interested in learning through your story and through your journey. So let us know how'd you make your way to stamps?
Yeah. You know, before I decided to join stamps, I knew I wanted to do something in art and design. That was just based on high school classes that I took that just made me realize this is what I like. I feel like I'm kind of good at it. I'd like to explore that a little bit more. But I didn't want to get away too much from other things that I was interested in. Like I was really interested in learning about like business and just like psychology, like communication,
Nice.
just a ton of different topics. So I knew like going to university was important to me. So University of Michigan seemed great. You know, it's such a reputable school in so many different departments. So it was kind of like the perfect choice for me where I could be part of like an art school, but still have the resources of a huge university so that I could, learn more than just art and design.
Yeah, it sounds like you were a perfect candidate for not just interdisciplinary in the sense of the art program, but interdisciplinary in terms of your education as a whole. And I think that's something that attracts a lot of people at University of Michigan into stamps. So kudos to you and following your intuition on that. So you were there for undergrad all 4 years?
Yes, all 4 years from
Okay.
2014 to 2018.
Okay, 2014, 2018. Nice. And what are some of your maybe fondest memories you feel, whether it was a class or something that you learned that you feel like you've already have experienced some like maybe full circle moments or moments in your career where you're just like, "Ooh, I'm glad I took that class," or "I'm glad I did that."
Yeah, I feel like I'm having those full circle moments like pretty often. Like now that I'm like I have my like I have a design career, and I look back and I'm like, wow, like I took 4D class freshman year. um, like that was so outside of my comfort zone at that time. But through that, like I have all this like random but really useful knowledge about how to use like Final Cut Pro and how to like do like videography, things like that.
Nice.
You know, I think one of the best things about stamps, I was part of the BA program,
Okay.
is participating in the electives outside of just stamps. Especially, I think there's like a race and ethnicity requirement that we have to do.
Mhm.
And through that, I took a women's studies class, and I loved it so much that, I joined a student group called Lean In. It's a group that, raises awareness about gender equality and creates a safe space for having, really important conversations and difficult conversations about the challenges that women face. So things like that were super valuable. I feel like I'm constantly having full circle moments where I'm like, wow, I'm so glad like I learned that so early on, and I tried so many different things then, because now I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what I want and what I'm really passionate about.
I love that for you. And for those who are unfamiliar, can you just give us a short, what is the BA program versus the BFA?
So I think,
or at the time, because at the time,
yeah,
right?
at the time, yes. So I think BA is a little bit more generalized. I mean, it's not general at all, but I think it's like half like other UMich courses and half design courses. I was kind of struggling between whether to go BFA or BA. I really didn't know which route I wanted to do. But then the more that I took electives and I had interest in like learning more about women's studies, communication, psychology, I wanted to take advantage of the credits that I could use for other classes. It was the right balance for me at the time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think just as what you described, it's essentially, one path has more classes within the art and design school, and the other path has almost like a 50-50 split. So that makes a lot of sense. Were internships on your mind at all? Especially into like your junior and your senior year. What were you doing to kind of prepare for life after stamps, or were you even preparing?
To be honest, I did, but I also wasn't like actively looking for internships as much as my peers were. I feel like the things that benefited me more than internships that I did during my junior year were actually the classes that I took at STAMS, particularly a class with Frank, course.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, legendary
Yes,
designer right
legendary,
there.
of course. I took 2 classes with him. Well, actually, I took more than 2, but 2 that like really stuck out to me. The print publications class and the visual identity and branding class. For one of those classes, he brought in real clients for us to solve design problems for. That was my first exposure to clients, working with constraints, thinking outside of our comfort zone and trying to create our own creative voice. So I feel like I actually had more value in classes like that and the internships that I was doing just for the sake of having an internship. Because I felt like at the time, like I had to do an internship to have something on my resume. But like looking back, I do think some of the classes that I took actually had a lot more value into the work that I had in my portfolio and like the experiences that I could talk about during interviews.
Yeah, and I'd love to just underscore that point because I think that's becoming even more prevalent today. Whether it's getting harder to find internships or more students than there are opportunities. I think it's really fascinating, and we've heard this in other episodes too, of people finding opportunities, whether it's within a class. So being very strategic about the classes that you're taking. You can always find that professor or email them, ask for a syllabus and get an idea, as well as, some people on From Here to There have also shared stories of finding internship-like experiences through the clubs that they were a part of in and outside of the art and design school. So I think that's a really valid point. Just because, sometimes people can be like, oh man, I did a disservice. I didn't do any internships, but you found where that kind of worked in between as well. And I think that's really great.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me more about your senior year.
My senior year, yes. So senior year is when I was like, okay, like I really need to put together a solid portfolio and start applying to jobs. And I started preparing probably like end of junior year, going into senior year. Having a secured job during my senior year was kind of my priority. I'm an international student, so for me, like having like to secure like work visa and all that, there's that
it's a different level of pressure for you.
Yes, different level of pressure. So I needed to find the right opportunity, but also kind of time it so that I could have that opportunity lined up right when I graduate, because there's timing from when you need to have like a job secured after you graduate. So started prepping for it really earlier on. Like I said, the classes that I took at STAMS, those were like really portfolio worthy pieces that I actually still have in my website now because I loved.
They were that good.
They were that good, and like it's really quality design. It's timeless. So I started prepping for that really earlier on, and then I started attending like a lot of like UMich events to like visit companies,
Okay.
also like setting up meetings with Brian and John,
Mhm.
pretty on a regular basis to help me network, because I didn't know anything about networking. The
Right.
thought of like reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, that was very foreign to me. So learning how to network, and then there was an opportunity from the Career Center to visit some design agencies in Detroit. I had an opportunity to visit Leo Burnett. And that was when I was like, okay, like this seems like a really cool agency. I kind of want to try advertising when I graduate. And from that, like my mind was kind of set on trying to find a job at Leo Burnett, because they left
Okay.
a really good impression on me after I did that tour through the Career Center. And then, John helped me network with a few alums that were working there at the time. So I think like for one at fall break, I went to Chicago to meet up with one of the people that worked at Leo Burnett. Then I got to have a pretty good understanding of what the company's like, the culture's like, which kind of reinforced my interest in wanting to join that company.
Nice.
I got pretty lucky, and they actually came to Stamps for a portfolio review
Nice.
during my senior year. And I got my portfolio ready and had a chance to do like a quick chat with them. And that was when, I think it was like December, like a semester before I was graduating. And they told me that there was a position available, but it was for that winter. And I couldn't start working like a semester before I graduated, which I was kind of bummed out about. But then, I kept networking,
Still a
and
win because they reached out to you.
yes, still a win. And then, I kept in contact with them so that I got really lucky again. And when I graduated, they had that position still open. And then I
Nice.
joined them right after I graduated.
Nice. That is amazing. I kind of wanted maybe just there might be some people who are listening, and they might be in that situation of, they've got their hearts really set on a company, or you can kind of think about what were some of those gut feelings that made you feel like, okay, I think I really like this company as my first, job out of college, because even with the pressure of, the time limitations that you had and being an international student, there's also the pressure of just like, all right, you got your art degree, get a job, whatever you can get. And I think that a lot of students can miss out on, advocating for themselves and having a say. You don't have to jump on the very first opportunity, but it sounds like you really did your homework to learn more about this company and meet with people who are actively working there. So you can just talk a little bit more about some of those feelings that you had where you was like, okay, I really like this. What were you looking for yourself?
Yeah, I was looking to join a big company,
Okay.
but be in a smaller office setting. So I
Okay.
worked out of the Detroit office, which is it's a smaller office than the Chicago office, which has like hundreds of people, like
Okay.
maybe thousands. Whereas the office in Detroit, it kind of functions more as like a boutique agency. So
Sure.
there were opportunities for me to wear a lot of more hats in that role. And that's really what I was looking for, because in my case, worst case scenario, with my visa, I would only have 1 year to work. And I wanted to make the most of that 1 year. So having the ability to be challenged and given a lot of opportunities to grow the most within a year was really important. And I found opportunities to do that at the agency, within like my first 2 months after graduating. I mean, at the company, like my manager at the time, he sent me on a shoot to art direct like a commercial. I have like zero experience in that field. And I'm really thankful for that now, because, I made a lot of mistakes, of course, but being challenged, it allows you to try different things that are outside your comfort zone. That's how you grow. But it also presents a lot of opportunities for you to fail, and failure is okay. That's how you learn. So learned really fast, failed a lot, but then, you learn from it.
In your first role, that title was art director.
It was junior designer, but
Junior designer.
yeah, but as I mentioned, you wear a lot of different hats. It was kind of like designer, slash production designer, art director, print designer, kind of like a whole design, like boot
So
camp.
what did your role look like when you started? Like, what was some of your like day-to-day things? And then how did your role evolve while being at that company to the point of where you left?
Yeah, so I kind of started in my first project was designing a catalog for General Motors to catalog their whole like brand portfolio. And that was fun. And then, more projects started coming in that were like, shooting, like finding photographers to go on a shoot with, to, shoot the new vehicle launch. And as I got more involved in different projects and learned a little bit more about what a full service agency really looks like, I started getting more on projects that were outside of my day-to-day description of my job, which were, as a junior, it's a little bit more, it's like you're a sponge. You learn about people, you learn about processes. I think initially my role was to, design catalogs for them, but it didn't evolve. I was open to new opportunities, and I kept advocating for wanting exposure, even to just like sit in on meetings that I wasn't really part of.
Smart.
And I think that gave me more opportunities to get involved and be taken like more seriously too, as a, someone that is a new grad. Going on a shoot to direct like photographers, that was intimidating. But I think being open to those challenges helped me evolve a lot quicker within my role.
I love that. Had you directed other people before?
I have not.
How did it feel telling other people what to do?
It's so weird. I was not comfortable with it.
Any imposter syndrome?
So much imposter syndrome.
It's like, you all have no idea. This is my first time doing it, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah. And like, when I was first starting, like people would ask me like, oh, where were you before this? Assuming that I had other experience, and like, I didn't know what to say. I was like,
that's a compliment.
I said, I used to like, I was in Ann Arbor, like keep it vague. Not tell them that I just graduated like a few months ago. But for sure, like that imposter syndrome is, I feel like so many people can relate to it, especially when they're like newly out in their careers. But you have the skills, you are there for a reason, and you have to just believe in yourself and constantly advocate for yourself, because you are where you belong. You just need to keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you didn't 100% believe it, you had the job offer of a company who believed it in you. So at the very least, if anyone, you don't have all that faith in yourself, if somebody gives you a job offer, somebody else does. So definitely bet on it. So how long were you at Leo Burnett?
I was there for 2.5 years. I was junior designer for about like 14 months, and then I got promoted to a designer within those months. And within that, I started working closely with one of the interns, and I got experience, being able to mentor someone, and I really enjoyed doing that, helping out someone, because I've been in their shoes. I know how overwhelming it might feel. So I really love that.
Very nice. So tell us more about what was that transition leaving Leo Burnett? Where did you go to next? And, how was that transition? Because I know some people can also feel awkward about leaving their first job.
Oh my gosh, it was so emotional for me. Because, at one point in my life, you know, working at Leo Burnett, that was my dream. And working there for 2.5 years, I realized that there are other things that are more important to me now. There are other fields that I would like to explore that I can't get at this agency anymore.
Mm,
What I was looking for was, looking for more opportunities in UI and UX.
okay.
That was like a new field for me, but that really interested me in going into that digital space. I also wanted to go to a company that was that had stronger DE&I initiatives. And I feel like my experience at Leo Burnett, it made me realize like what I'm really looking for now that I've had this experience. And it made me a little bit more picky about the types of companies that I would apply for.
Nice. Yeah. Being picky is not a bad thing. Especially when you've gotten that experience underneath your belt, and that experience, as you're saying, that's what helped shape what you wanted. So how did your next job hunt look like? What roles were you looking for? Where did you land? How long did it take you to land it, get that new job offer before leaving Leo Burnett? Tell us a little bit about that transition part.
Yeah. Once the pandemic started,
Oh, that little thing that's still going
yeah,
on?
that thing. Once that became a thing, my work balance, it just wasn't the same. And I knew it was time for me to look for something else to keep growing as a designer. So I started my job search. It was more passive than active. I knew like my non-negotiables. And with that, I would just spend my free time researching digital agencies that specialize in UI UX, and start talking to people that work there, and just get a feel for what their experience is like. Because I knew that if I was making a job switch, it would have to be something that really aligns with my values and make that transition from, my current employer, Leo Burnett, to the next. That it would have to be really meaningful for me to make such a bold, at that time, that was like a bold move for me.
Sure.
Such a
Yeah.
bold move. So started, just researching companies. And I heard about Huge through an old coworker of mine at Leo Burnett. And they just seemed really active with their DE&I initiative. It seems like they, did a lot of important work, not just like design work that's beautiful, but design work that has more impact than just beautiful things, which I was really looking for. I wanted to do
Sure.
design that had more substance.
No, that's really great. So when did you officially start working for Huge? What was that interview process like? I mean, with the pandemic on top of it, I assume there was a lot of virtual interviews.
Yes. Oh my gosh, virtual interviews was super weird for me because it was like that time when we were all transitioning into like Zoom world. Now I feel more comfortable with it, but at the time, like it was really awkward.
Sure.
Um, but the recruiter that I worked with at Huge was so amazing and so supportive. And I had an amazing interview experience where everything was so transparent to me. After interviewing, like the recruiter would call me and like give me feedback on how other people reacted to that, and like whether you get the job or not. I think always getting feedback is good because
Nice.
that
And
helps.
rare.
Yes, rare. Because that makes you grow, and like you learn from it, even if you might not get the outcome that you want. That's super valuable. So I think overall I was passively looking for jobs for, I don't know, like 4 months. That's quite a long time.
Sure.
But Huge, was my top choice. So I made every effort to, connect with people there, and learn about the company, and make the right decision for myself. So I started at Huge September of 2020. And I've been there ever since. So almost a year and a half.
Nice. And what's your job title?
My job title is visual designer in the experience department. What's interesting about Huge is that they have, obviously like different teams, like, product management, data analytics, research, all that. But for design, what's really cool about them is they have two departments. They have an experience design department, which specializes in like UI, UX, visual design. But there's also an integrated department, which is kind of like a traditional agency. So it was kind of like for a designer like me who kind of came from that background, kind of like best of both worlds, because I could, grow in this newfound interest in UI UX that I had. But if it didn't work out, like there's always that integrated department,
right? You can just slide over.
Yes, exactly. So I really liked that. This company had that. I don't really know if a lot of agencies have that, but that is something that was, really great for me.
Nice. So presently, but also even rewinding a little back, I definitely want to just touch on the salary aspect. How are you thinking about budgeting your life and affording your life, especially coming out of school? When we have these from here to there sessions, learning about some people saved up money. You didn't move very far since you went from Ann Arbor to Detroit. So there was that, but also as a young creative, it can be very difficult advocating for yourself and what you feel like you're supposed to be making. And oftentimes for first jobs, you're not advocating at all and you're just taking whatever salary they give you. What was that salary advocating experience for you with your first job compared to when you were stepping into Huge, now that you kind of had a better understanding of your value?
Yeah, what an amazing question. I look back and I don't think I advocated enough for myself in my first job. When I first got that job offer from Leo Burnett, I was like, wow, I have this amazing job offer. Like I was almost like scared to ask for more money because I thought like I should be grateful for this amazing opportunity. Like they could do my visa sponsoring. Like I shouldn't ask for more. Like I don't want to burden them. And that's kind of like the sentiment that I had. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, like I should have asked for more. I should have advocated for myself more. Like I know the value that I was bringing to the company, the skills, the experience. So I wish I would have had asked for more, because the worst thing that they could say is just no, or like you cannot, but then at least like you tried. And if salary was something that was more important to you, then that's obviously your non-negotiable. And there are so many other companies that would be able to meet that for you. So when I was, looking for new jobs and Huge was good, I did. And I was like, this is the range that I'm looking for. Can you meet me there? And they were able to do that, which was amazing. Another great thing about Huge is that, they treat humans like humans and they don't, try to underpay you or anything like that, which is so important, I think.
Yeah.
That I overlooked when I was first starting out.
Did you do any research based on the role that you were looking to move into, as visual designer? Did you do any research on like what your salary should be in? Like what did you use any resources, to determine that for yourself?
Yeah. So definitely doing a lot of research, within that city, and that network, that with my years of experience, how much should I be making?
Just the DC area, right?
For the DC area, yes. But what's interesting about Huge is that, they don't try to pay you depending on city. They have a set range for that level, which
Nice.
I think, I don't know how common that is, but I do think, it gives everyone fair range when it comes to salary, and they're pretty transparent about it. As a visual designer, you make between this and this, depending on your seniority and experience, you might be on like the higher end of this, but it's not, a surprise to me if I hear that, someone makes the same amount. They try to keep the pay equal among the same types of, titles.
And I think with more and more remote roles, that's probably going to continue to be more important, right? When, what happens when you've got people in like a little town in Wisconsin versus New York City, but they're doing the exact same role at the same level of seniority. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. So tell us about your experience at Huge. What's your day-to-day like there as a visual designer on the experience side?
Yes. So Huge, for those that might not know, it's a full service digital design agency. We work with clients like Google, Verizon, McDonald's, Shipped, Epic Games, etc. I wanted to do design that had more impact. And that was also like kind of from my experience at Stamps. I think Stamps really tries to teach students to use their like skills for good, particularly like classes like Change by Design, that had a huge impact on me, that impacted like the type of work that I wanted to do after my first job. But the work that I do here, is focused on users and doing human-centered design. During my time here, I've worked on launching new products, redesigning websites, developing design systems for a variety of projects from real estate to government and healthcare. The main project right now is for a government healthcare client. Oh, but another thing, like Huge operates on like a project basis. So you kind of work on different projects. When that project ends, you move on to the next, which it keeps the excitement going, starting something new. But I really wanted
the same in the animation field. So that's very fascinating.
Yeah. So yeah, I was really interested in kind of exploring the government healthcare space, especially with like COVID happening at that time. And the project that I'm on now, it's for Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's like 60 million people are like affected by, this space. So it's a very specific product that is focused on, transforming the healthcare space to be more quality driven. And I won't get too specific about it. It might get a little bit too confusing, but it's really important work. It's human-centered design, working with real users, solving real problems that they're facing, and making like healthcare more accessible to Americans. So I really love the type of work that I'm doing now. It's backed up with research. We have user research test all of our designs in front of real users. So I get a lot of fulfillment knowing that my designs and skills are used for solving problems.
I love that. How big is the team that you're working with, and are you managing other people? Are you just more in a group space? Is there a lot of independent work?
Yeah, the team that I work with right now, it really depends like on each project, but the team that I work with right now, it has about 12 people, 3 designers. I kind of started in this role as a visual designer, but I have moved on into a more lead role. So that's really cool. I'm not like directly managing people, but I am onboarding designers and making sure everyone gets up to speed. So not like directly, but indirectly, yes, I am. Making sure, communication between teams, that's going well. And making sure other designers on the team are happy.
Awesome. I love that. I'm very excited that you're in this role, and really excited to kind of see how that continues to grow.
Yeah.
How are you liking the DC area? And just thinking a little bit more logistically, did you move from Detroit to DC, or just what was your kind of living situation like, and how are you budgeting your life to
Mhm.
balance your work and affording life and moving if you had to move?
So I haven't moved yet.
Okay.
We are completely remote. Well, for now. So I haven't had to move since I started.
Nice.
It
You're
keeps
still in
getting
Detroit.
delayed with COVID. Yes, I'm still in Detroit.
Okay.
So fully remote. I haven't been in an office in like, I don't know, so long, 2 years.
What's an
I
office?
can't even remember. And this is definitely like my preferred way of working now.
That was my next question. I was like, do you want to
Yes.
go to an office?
I will say, me starting a new job being remote, I have noticed that my interaction with teammates, it's kind of limited. I only talk to people that I work with on a daily basis. So I do see the value of going into an office, especially if you're new, because that way you can talk to people more naturally, in the hallway, and build relationships better. Because I think when you're online, that natural human interaction, it's not that natural. It can be kind of awkward. So I do see the value of going into an office, especially if you're starting new at a new company. But it's working just fine for me
Nice.
right now.
We are getting close to Q&A time, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Lily is excited to answer your questions. Any question, big or small, let us know what your thoughts are. I'd love to take this opportunity to actually ask you if you're open to sharing a little bit more of the kind of visa experience.
Mhm.
I don't think that I've actually interviewed an alum
Mhm.
where that was a factor for them. And I do think that there's already just so much pressure on finding a job, and trying to support yourself to find something that's going to allow you to like pay for your transportation and cover rent, and rent is going up everywhere. So we already have those pressures, but on top of having to rely on a company,
Mhm.
to support your visa, is that something that you're conscientious of in all, you know, job seeking opportunities? And yeah, just kind of how did you navigate that, or if you have any advice for anyone else who might be listening, and that's a factor for them that they have to be mindful of.
For sure, for sure. To that point of budgeting, I know you asked me that earlier. When I first got the job, I was not good at budgeting. I didn't know how to budget. I was bad. And I learned that the hard way. So now I'm better at budgeting.
I think most people are bad, so don't feel bad. Until
Yeah,
you're forced to have to do it, I think
yes.
most people just slide by avoiding budgeting.
Yeah. But I will say, try to budget. That's the advice I would give anyone. But, talking about visas, I had to have those conversations with companies, really early on. And, constantly, I almost felt like when I was first starting, like I had to prove to the company that I was worthy of this visa. So, that kind of made me burn out a little bit too, because I was constantly like on high alert
Yeah,
to overperform,
your
to
skills aren't enough.
exactly, to be worthy of this visa. So, what I would tell myself now is just do your best. You don't need to overwork yourself to burn out, because when you're burned out, you're not even going to be creative anyway. Just relax and, go to a company that supports your visa and will be willing to support you on that journey. I would also say plan ahead, because with visas, it can take months. And also, worst case scenario, if you don't get the work visa after your 1 year of OPT, which is the 1 year that you get after you graduate from a 4-year program. If not that, like, you know, there are other options. You know, if your company has other offices in your home country, maybe they can transfer you there temporarily.
Yeah.
Try again the next year. So I would probably plan for backups. You know, you could also go back to grad school if you wanted to stay and continue your education. So I would just plan ahead for visa situations. Don't do it last minute because it takes months to, you know, one, find a job, but also like get all the paperwork finalized and ready for you to start working.
Do you feel like you've arrived in terms of, you know, your work experience, or do you feel like there are still areas that, you know, you've yet to explore?
I feel like there's still so much for me to learn. I definitely feel like being in this digital space, doing design work, like this is the space that I want to be in. But also like company, you know, I like being at a company that is transparent and open to having really difficult conversations, to, you know, support diversity and inclusion within the workplace. So this is definitely what it aligns a lot more with what I'm looking for. But again, like to that, like I really miss like creating things like tangible. You know, every day I'm on my computer working, and I do miss that creative outlet that I had at school where I could, you know, go to the wood shop class and do something. So I do miss that.
Are you doing anything for yourself outside of working?
I've been trying to be better at that, because to be honest, I haven't been that great about, you know, having another creative outlet outside of work, which to me is pretty important. So I'm trying to find what's next for me. I'm pretty interested in like ceramics. I like really using my hands for creating things. So that's kind of like what I'd like to continue learning.
Nice. A little background info for everyone here. So when Lily and I had our little prep call prior to, you know, we were thinking a lot about, you know, when you are creative and you get to land that job, what are you doing in the other parts of your life as well? You know, how are you using other parts of your brain, and finding that other type of creative outlet? I think is really important, but also even thinking about and the type of work that you're looking for. You know, if you're in the stamps program, I'm pretty sure there's more than one medium that fascinates you. You're in an interdisciplinary program. And I think that's something that you all can definitely take advantage of, you know, just like Lily, you know, working as a visual designer. And next time you chat with her, she'll probably be starting a little ceramics on the side. You'll have all your pottery behind you. And this is what I've been doing as of late. But I do think it's important to identify, you know, not every part of your creativity and your practice needs to be monetized, right? So really thinking about what parts of yourself, what gifts and talents are you interested in monetizing? Are you interested in sharing with a company or with an employer? And which ones do you want to keep for yourself and maybe navigate in a different way on your own?
You know, I think stamps, there's so much for you to explore. And I think that's like the beauty of it. You can try different things. For example, like I took a 3D class, knowing that I sucked at 3D. Like I was bad and like I did really poorly in class actually. But through that, like I knew, okay, maybe 3D isn't like my career path. But you kind of learn, like you learn your strengths, you learn your weaknesses.
Yeah.
There's beauty in that.
And college is definitely the time to do that.
Yeah.
Well, you can take advantage of that. Anybody else have questions for Lily?
So believe it or not, I'm going to jump in first.
Go for it, John.
So anybody who has questions, oh, thank you, T, and we'll get your question in just a sec. Um, because we're recording this, and we do have international students, the first thing I want to clarify, are we talking about an HB1 visa?
Oh, H-1B, yes,
H1B,
yes,
yes.
yes.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah. Um, so I think your advice to try and plan ahead, because obviously over the last let's say 10 years, we have seen all kinds of changes to the way the federal government thinks about immigration, about how we handle people from other countries. And we know that policy can change very quickly. Um, so if anybody who's seeing this on a recording rather than a Q&A today has questions for you about, how are you handling these situations, are you okay with them getting in touch with you
Yeah, of
to
course.
find out, what is your advice about how to go from OPT to H1B?
Of
Yeah?
course.
Absolutely.
I consulted you too. I was like, I need, like, what do I do about my visa situation? How do I find a company that
Oh,
will be okay with OPT? Yeah.
so Jenny Jin in the chat just said she was going to ask that same question. So I know who I work with. Um, and I actually do have another question for you because Huge is a global company, and I
Mhm.
love the way at least their website handles how to be in touch around the world. And for the Detroit office, it literally says "What up," just like Detroiters. Um, do you have any desire to work in another country because Huge could let you do that?
Yeah, I think definitely, if I think right now I would like to stay here. But I do like that there is the option for me to explore globally, if there is an opportunity for me to do that later on in the future. I think it adds a little bit like of comfort knowing that, something happens, like policy changes. There's a way to work around that.
Very good. Thank you so much. So T has the question, besides school projects, do you have any self project while you were at Stamps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was really interested in fashion design and textile design while I was, specializing in 2D and like branding, graphic design. So on the side, I would like make dresses out of like random materials like soda pop. What are those things called? The things
Nice.
you
The
open?
tabs.
Sort of, yes, those.
Yeah.
And like just like really random materials like garbage. I would make dresses out of garbage. Um,
Environmental designer. I love this.
like, random materials like band-aids. So
Oh my
I
God, I
miss
remember that project.
that. So yes, I did do some self projects to um, continue developing as a designer outside of, what I was specializing in. And I would encourage students to do that, because that's an creative outlet for you. And sometimes that outlet might be different from, your day-to-day job.
I
Yeah.
love that. Nicole, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Hi, yeah, it was so great to hear about your journey. And yeah, I really loved all the advice. I guess a question that I have is that I know you started off as a creative director for your first role, and it was really nice to hear that you had the option to kind of put on different hats and work with a broad scope of different mediums and type of projects. I'm wondering if there was ever a time within your position when you realize that you like to work with a certain medium the most. For example, directing photo shoots or working with print collaterals. And once you kind of realize this, did you have the option to kind of focus more on that, or did you have to continue just working in more broader scopes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that kind of comes to advocating for yourself, and being vocal about what you want to continue doing. If you are ever put in a situation where, you express that you want to continue growing in, art direction, and you're being put on like the complete opposite, I think, again, like you need to advocate for yourself. You need to let people know that you want to grow in this field, and your company, your employer should want to nurture you and make sure you have the opportunities to grow in what you want to. That's super important. And I think that's something that you should, look out for in your next employer. Make sure that they want to grow you how you want to grow. I definitely, advocated for myself, especially in like the projects that I wanted to work on. But you have to ask for it, because no one's going to read your mind. No one's going to know that you want to work on X, without you telling people that you want to grow in this field.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lily, I want to jump back to the idea of working for an agency that it's by project versus account. Most sort of advertising, marketing, design companies, you're assigned to an account. And so I work on the Ford account, or I work on the McDonald's account. Um, what is it like to work for an agency where it's not by account, it's by projects?
Yes, that is a great question. When I was at my first job, it was by account. So the projects that I was working on, they were more limited, and it would kind of be the same thing. Like they might be different projects, but it's still for the same client. And after 2.5 years, I felt like I knew everything that I needed to know about General Motors. And I knew it was time for me to learn something else. And what's really interesting about project-based companies is that you're, whether your projects, they range from time. It could be a year, it could be 2 months, depending on the scope of it. But being on a project-based agency, I think that gives you more exposure to different industries, different types of projects. It could be a redesign. It could be, developing a design system for an app. So I think there's a lot more range and variety in project-based companies.
Great. Eamon has a great question in the chat. How did you keep in contact with the company that accepted you during Portfolio Expo, but you still had more college, which was your experience? And then she goes on to say, I will hopefully be part of the Portfolio Expo this February, but I later have a 1-year master's right after graduation. So I was wondering if you could have tips on networking and keeping in contact.
Yeah, I think this just comes to networking and building relationships with people, not just reaching out to someone for, for a job, but like really having a real working relationship with someone, catching up with them, once a month or even like every other month, just to see how they're doing, and not just treating it like keeping in touch with someone so that later on, like you can get the job there. I think that's a lot more special and organic to build that relationship with someone. But, I would say definitely, reach out to the company before you graduate, like way in advance before you graduate, so that, they can keep you in mind for any open roles, because the way that open roles work, they might be planned out way in advance. So you want to be aware that, you want to know that the company is thinking about you when they're thinking of new roles. So
would you encourage the student to also, still have interviews, even knowing that they're going to have another year for their master's?
I would say yes. I would say explore all the
Yeah.
opportunities. I mean, I applied to like literally like more than 100 jobs, even though like Leo Burnett was my number one choice. Um, so I would say be open, know what you want, but be open to other opportunities because it might be even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And sometimes, this job hiring process can take so long.
Yeah.
Some companies are super quick and they're like, hey, I want you here in a week. And then others can really drag out the
Yeah.
process. And next thing you know, as of February, you have your 1 year program. But by time maybe your top choice or a company gets back to you, you've got 6 months left. So it kind of changes things. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lily. I definitely don't want to miss out on, we talked about mentorship. And if anyone would like to reach out to Lily, if you have any other questions, if you see that Lily might be your future mentor and you want to be their mentee, Lily kindly has dropped her email and LinkedIn. Go ahead and make that connection now. You'll not only be connected to Lily, but now you're connected to the huge community.
I have to just thank Lily so much. Um, you are so delightful. I've missed being able to talk to you on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, of course, you are just absolutely the best. So thank everybody for being here. This has been a delight, and because again we are recording, um, I will make sure to point people in the right direction when they have questions that I think this particular session of From Here to There is going to be useful, especially for international students who I think can be really feeling daunted by the process of OPT, and then not everybody gets to the place where you are with H1B. So this has been phenomenal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, I am going to stop the recording.